This is Take 5 with Bentley, Nevada. In the studio once again today is Darren Evans, Global Hardware Commercial Leader for Bentley, Nevada, with a focus on Orbit 60, but by no means is that the only thing that Darren knows to talk about. He has a pretty deep background in sales and really everything in the Bentley portfolio. But for this series of podcasts, we're here to talk about Orbit 60. And in the last conversation, Darren, you touched on this idea of a protection processor and a condition monitoring processor. And we were talking a little bit about Orbit aXess, which describes the ability to access condition monitoring data without the vulnerability of being able to impact the protection side of the system in any way. You kind of mentioned this idea of almost an air gap and some patented technology. I think if you talk to some of the other people in Bentley, they've been really careful to say it's not a data diode, but it's like a data diode, and it's actually better than a data diode. In terms of the different functions of the protection processor versus the condition monitoring processor, can the condition monitoring processor consume data that's already been processed by the protection processor? So as it computes overalls and alarms and extracted data, the 1x, the 2x, and so forth, can that be shared with the condition monitoring processor?
Yeah, so the Orbit 60 architecture is kind of unique. We take the data that comes in from the sensors and we put it on the backplane in its raw form. That really allows us to do anything we want with that data with any module in the future and as we design the system. So for example, if a protection processor is taking a look at that raw data, making measurements and doing alarms and calculations on that, putting that data back on the backplane, any module within the rack can consume that data like you would expect from like a relay module. With the CMM, the condition monitoring processor as well, we're able to take that data and we're able to do anything that's flowing around the backplane, raw data, calculated values, all your process data coming in, we talked about earlier, that's riding on the backplane. The CMM has access to all that data.
So again, if coming in from the sensors, you have the raw data that's on the backplane. The protection module can compute additional extracted information from that. It can publish that to the backplane. And then that can also be consumed by all these other modules. And it just kind of adds to the available data, I guess, in the system. Each module can make calculations and publish it out to that backplane.
It really makes the system extremely flexible for the future. If 3 years down the road, we wanted to add a new module to the platform for a new type of asset or a new type of measurement, having all that raw data, we have complete flexibility on how we can design that card, and it'll really have minimal impact to any other card in the rack. If you look back at some legacy technology, we typically had to do firmware upgrades so many modules within the rack as new functionality was introduced. We don't expect that with Orbit 60 moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, my mind's kind of racing right now with all the possibilities of that. But the bottom line is modules don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can take what's already been produced by another module and use it rather than recompute it all over again. Well, boy, there's more I'd like to explore about the cybersecurity aspect, but I think what I'm actually going to do there, Darren, is we're going to bring James McDuffie into the studio to talk about IEC 62443, talk about, just it's such a big topic. I mean, going back to our first conversation, you said, in those 200 plus customer visits, cybersecurity was number one. So I know our listeners are going to be particularly keen on learning about cybersecurity and what's been baked into the Orbit 60 platform.
Yeah, I think James can do a fantastic job going into more levels of detail. I think going back and just reflecting on how we designed the platform, a lot of the other technology is really you create your cybersecurity environment from the outside of the system through network robustness, whether it's firewalls, data diodes, database replication. With Orbit 60, think about it this way. Think about it as all those cybersecurity aspects are built into the platform to really simplify how you connect it to the outside world. And James will do a great job kind of bringing that to light.
Okay. Yeah, there's a big difference between baking it into the product and trying to kind of glob it on after the fact. So we're looking forward to having James in the studio for that. And we're going to have you back in. There's a little bit more I want to pick your brain on with the Orbit 60 platform. And with that, you've been listening to Take 5 with Bentley Nevada, a Baker Hughes business.